an overview, and let's start.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. So, I mean, what I love about it is a statement, right? It's a place of authority, and it's a question that's poised in how we rise.
Yeah.
And so essentially this came out of, the 50 out of 50 study, which indicated that the probability of moving from, poverty to the middle class and on up in Charlotte is relatively low, based on several factors, but the cross-cutting factors were segregation and the lack of social capital.
Yeah.
And so the question that is poised is, how do we rise? There's been a lot of information on social capital, so to speak. However, that social networks has not really been explored. So social capital being what you bring to those social networks.
Yes.
This project really wants to dive into those and see where are the gaps. What are some communities doing to sustain relationships, maintain relationships, and build new relationships? And what are some communities doing that is not happening? So from a policy perspective, from municipality and personal policies, what are we doing that's preventing those things and relationships from really manifesting in our community?
So I think, and I know we talked the other day, like that 50 out of 50 study back in 2016 that Harvard Business Review released was a really tough thing for the city to stomach.
Oh yeah.
And yet in the fall of 2016, we saw a response to a pretty horrible situation. And I think that accentuated where these divisions were and how real the situation had become. So for you, you're a native Charlottean, right? Yeah. So tell us a little bit more, not just about the project, but as people look to engage with this or become community liaisons, why is that important for all people to engage?
Yeah, well, I love your last part of that question is all people, and it's important for us to get an accurate depiction from our city. We're all a community, and everyone's a representation of a community member, right? Yeah. And so the importance of this piece of the project, when you say all people, is that if you're not showing up to the conversation, and then decisions are made, and it's like, okay, well, we missed out on a big segment of our population, which often happens, and so that's why it's just vital, man, for everyone to show up. And as you mentioned, since you harped on the Charlotte native piece, which I'm extremely proud of, man, it's just, it's fascinating to see what the city has become, the good of growth and then the growth pains that go along with that. I grew up in Charlotte, we probably had maybe 10 high schools at the time when I was growing up or not. And, 10, 11 high schools. Yeah. A couple more than that, a couple more dozen than that, right? and so, it was amazing that we used to have, busing existed in that time. And so, you went to schools far out. I grew up in East Charlotte, but went to schools out in Matthews. Okay. And so, there was good and bad associated with that. But I'll say I'll harp on the positive was that I was able to interact with people that weren't directly in my community. Right. So there were difference in socioeconomics, there were difference in race and belief systems and all of that. And now, unfortunately, our city is designed in such a way that kind of keeps people boxed in to not just socioeconomic status, but just even a perspective of thought. Which is important, man. And I can say to you, man, I think we rob God in doing that if we don't really harp in on all that He's created, man. And just stick to our own little box. You know?
So some would say that is a proximity problem in our community. We hark on that a bunch, but maybe for folks that have just joined or just kind of curious, popping in, asking what this live conversation is about. Again, this is George Metz. We're talking about how we rise. He talked about the genesis of a lot of this study, this research that's being done based on the upward mobility study that was done back in 2016. Let's talk about social mobility. Like,
Yeah.
What is that? Why is that important? And what factors play into that you're trying to maybe uncover as you guys do your research?
Yeah, well, I mean, social mobility is essentially it's moving from class to class in socioeconomic terms,
Okay.
and so it's the ability to start somewhere and then go to the next level and on up and continually excel. And so the thing is, it's like we understand that relationships are a vital part
Yeah.
of movement. And information is a new form of capital, you know? And
Yeah.
so if you're locked out of information, you're often locked out of being able to move
Right.
into different classes, into different you know, economic places or whatnot. And so it's extremely vital to really have an understanding of your network, you know, and what are you missing within your network and what are you blocking out? And so I like to think of social capital as being this so it's defined as this. It's a bond, bridge, link relationship, right? And so in the bridge relationship, which is, yeah, it's relationships. And so the bridge, what often is thought about is that it's just reaching up. However, the bridge is open on both ends. It's access points.
Yes.
You know, and so no matter the class, there's much to be gained from whatever socioeconomic status you're coming from. You know, whether there's a resiliency factor coming from poverty or whether there's access into another socioeconomic climb from middle class and on up. And so there's factors that if we board those bridges, man, we all lose something to benefit from this, man.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I just, can you hear the like vacuum in the background?
Hey, it's sweet, man. It's all good.
All right, there we go. I'm back. Okay.
All right.
So relationships matter.
Yep.
I like that picture of this bridge kind of having two entry points. And
Yep.
I think someone in the comments put network equals net worth. And I've heard
Facts.
that song.
Yep.
Yep. And I definitely agree. There's a lot of truth behind that, and it's catchy.
Yep.
But talk to me about the actual process that you guys are using to go about getting the information that you need. Because at the end of the day, and again, to tie this back into the day of prayer, that our national day of prayer, like our prayers for our city is to seek the shalom or the peace of our city, or the flourishing of our city, not just parts of it. And to see the parts that aren't flourishing flourish, we need to know more about what's happening. So what are y'all doing?
Exactly.
How is that happening? And let's start there.
Yeah, man. And so what we're doing, we're having one-on-one interviews with community residents and whatnot. And so what's happening is there's conversations taking place between an individual and an interviewer. So we have about 7 interviewers on our staff that literally set time. Now we're doing it virtually, of course.
Right.
And and so, you know, you dive into the questions that are asked are something like, you know, like who would you go to for housing? And housing could be, you know, you think about that question, it's loaded in the sense of housing could be an investment property, or it could be my housing, you know. And so what you're doing is you're uncovering gaps within our networks. And so those questions are leading us to, again, uncover barriers, uncover gaps. And this information will be so vital as we shape policies in this city. And so towards the end of the project, at the finale of the project, you know, this information we presented. And what I'm so excited about is that this data remains in Charlotte. You know, it's not like some projects that come in, you know, it goes off to UC Berkeley, it goes off to UCLA, it goes off wherever, and we don't even know what took place in our own community.
Right.
And so this information comes right back into our community, and we're able to make those adjustments, and not just from a city council or commissioner level, but even in HOAs. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, and so it breaks it down to the basic level as possible from really getting, you know, obtaining the voices of the people. Yep.
So the voices of the people. So you do interviews, 30 minutes. You're asking questions just around how they get connected, what they get connected. Is it almost like mapping, or just a general sense?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, you know, you are mapping, but you are getting generalities as well. But you know, our researchers, and I won't claim to be a research expert by any means. Dr. Farrell Chestnut and Dr. Camille Busette are leading the project on the research end. They are true scientists.